thank you. You picked up many of the points, actually, that Bob Watson made earlier on today in your final slide there, so that was very helpful. We are, in theory, 2 minutes away from going back into the main auditorium, but I know we started 20 minutes late, so I'm going to propose that we take up to 10 minutes at most of questions, and I'm hoping the other groups will be doing the same thing. So without further ado, who'd like to take the microphone? And we'll do the same thing with 3 questions again.
My name is Norio Saito from Asian Development Bank. I have a question to Ms. Pillai. I think you rightly pointed out the issue of uncertainties. And when we discuss the impacts of climate change, then in each step of analysis, we have to deal with uncertainties. So in this study, how did you address the issue of uncertainties? Like you just laid out what uncertainties were involved, or you did some like a probabilistic risk assessment? And if you have any suggestions on how we should address the issue of uncertainties in other studies, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
I have an observation for Rafiq and a question for Poonam. I liked your slide, Rafiq, I liked your slide showing how the different sectors have come into environmental policy down the decades. And I think that challenge continues, and climate change poses new challenges which we need to face. I have a flippant observation. I liked the little picture you had for sociologists of striking a heroic pose against a vivid orange background. I think that was the most dynamic one there. I'm a sociologist. My question to Poonam is really how, I know your report has just come out, but what has anything resulted from it yet? How have cities reacted to this?
Anyone will take this?
I'm just curious, Poonam, if you could provide some examples. I know one of the recommendations is that cities should look at infrastructure planning in context or in combination with ecosystem services, I think.
Ecosystem-based adaptation.
Ecosystem-based adaptation, right.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it.
Okay. How did we address uncertainty? I think that we basically, I think that, as I mentioned, this was each of the cities considered a range of scenarios. So all of the results that we are presenting in the study need to be understood in the context of the scenario we are considering. But the analysis of how, and as you noted, there are uncertainties at every level. But the issue is not just stating that, it's how they are propagated to give us an overall error bar, so which is actually very difficult to do. Because what we found was that one of the biggest issues for us was lack of data. So coming up with even realistic error bars or uncertainty figures was very hard to do. But this was an issue that we were, aware of all the way through. But it's very difficult to come up with certain figures on uncertainty. In terms of follow-up, one of the ways, for example, in Ho Chi Minh City, that the analysis is influencing is that the city is preparing a climate adaptation strategy. And some of the results from the analysis are being included or have influenced their ongoing preparation of their climate strategy, the city-level strategy. But as I mentioned, this was a joint agency study with extremely high transaction costs. And the teams are following up at an at the agency level. But for ADB, for example, some of the results are also influencing their project level, their water projects. And the same is true for JICA's involvement in Metro Manila. So they have water projects in Metro Manila, and they're using some of this analysis to inform that. In Bangkok, we had the mayor, we just had a launch in Bangkok actually earlier in October, and there is tremendous buy-in, but what this will lead to from the municipality. And over the course of preparation, what we found was that the counterpart became much more open to the discussion of climate adaptation. In some municipalities, it's an extremely uphill task. So to change the mindset and to use this as a persuasion tool, especially in a context where different sectors in a city are doing their own planning. Sometimes there's very little coordination between the transportation sector plan and the water sector plan and the urban master plan, and so we are. It's not as simple as you know. So what we are trying to do is to improve coordination between these sector plans, to have some consistency across these plans, because without that, talking about climate adaptation, it's very difficult. So it's along those lines. It's supporting existing initiatives and also being used as a persuasion tool. And of course, the big question is, Bangkok had huge floods while we were there. And the big question is, how does this study inform what the city can do now, to not in 2050, but what can be done now? I think I answered all the questions today. Did you have a question? I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
Ecosystem-based adaptation question. If you do so really briefly, that would be appreciated.
What was your question on ecosystem-based adaptation?
I was just interested in an example of that.
Well, I think in what the studies did, it was to highlight, and not all studies did that, but some of the studies actually showed, for example, in the existence of mangroves and how they are protecting the cities from storm surges. And what the studies did was to show how these types of interventions can be low cost and can be included in climate adaptation, which they're currently actually not being done. So just a quick answer to your question is the idea that these issues are important, they are cost effective, but the emphasis is on hard infrastructure measures, and ecosystems-based adaptation approaches are nearly not getting the kind of attention that they should get.
Thank you, Poonam. I'm so sorry we've got so little time. It's clear that there could be such a longer discussion. Hopefully some of these can be taken off bilaterally. We've got time, I think, for either two very short questions or one longer one, and they'll have to be very short answers.
A very short question. Did these cities have disaster management teams, and did they tap into your studies, or will they? How do you set up this relationship?
Okay. That's it?
Yes, I know there's a question over here I can see, and there's one that, I'm sorry, you can fight it out.
Hi. Question for Rafiq. As the climate changes, flows will change. Did you give any thought, or do you have any thoughts about how we might evolve environmental flows as the climate changes?
Thanks. We have actually completed quite a detailed study that has been supported by WWF on that very same subject of dealing with climate change in the context of ecosystem management. That was one of the last reports that I pointed out. It is in press, it will come out soon. And what is becoming quite clear is that in the context of ecosystems, aquatic ecosystems, I don't think climate change is going to be the key driver. I think right now, today, they are the most degraded ecosystems of all. And that's largely because of existing development and regulation of water resources. And I think what climate change is going to do is going to worsen that situation. Now, in terms of adaptation measures, What is actually interesting is that the 3 sets of recommendations that that study makes are very consistent with our findings here. I mean, the main adaptation response for freshwater ecosystems will be to increase environmental flows. There's no question about that. And that means, I think, as Bob responded this morning, there are opportunities for improving water use, like there are opportunities for improving energy uses, et cetera, et cetera. I think our systems are highly, highly inefficient. They were built at different points in time. We have developed dams, et cetera, different systems on our river system, but we have never optimized them. I think there are opportunities to do that. The second response also relates to basically taking the decision making at the higher level, which is what this study was trying to do, is in order to improve infrastructure performance, if you are able to influence the policy level, it will become much easier. And I think in the long term, that's an important adaptation response. I mean, if our policies are much more flexible, that aim towards resilient ecosystems, we'll be able to make decisions at the project level much easier. And the last point also concerns, in the context of water, there is no silver lining in terms of dealing with climate change. I think we talk about flooding, blah, blah, blah. All of these are fundamental water management issues. The key response is we will need good functioning institutions in place, okay? That is the first and foremost requirement. It's on top of that, there will be specific circumstances where specific investments will be needed. So anyway, that's the short answer. Thank you.
Rafiq, thank you very much. And Poonam, I don't know if you could give a 30-second answer to the question you were asked.
Well, the quick answer is that I don't know whether they will take into account the results of our study. I hope so. I mean, there are all sorts of overlaps between the adaptation work and the disaster risk management work. In fact, many of the techniques that we have used build very much on the work that has been done by our colleagues in disaster risk management. So, so I hope on an optimistic note.
Thank you very much. We could have a final round of applause and we'll head back.